Hey everybody and subscribers, I am back. It's been a long break, but it's your old pal Ryan here again, and I can't tell you how honored I am about how many of you checked out the True Detective double exposure tutorial that we made. Oh man, it feels like forever ago, probably over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. So many of you have subscribed. You probably want more content. And I haven't been able to make it for you for some time. So, with that in mind, why don't we start with another title that's very recognizable, very new, and some new fun Photoshop techniques with the Stranger Things logo in Photoshop. So let's kick off by creating a new document in Photoshop. And I've got Photoshop, I think it's CC 2060, you know, God, they name it so weird now. 2015.5. Okay, whatever you say, Photoshop. I'm going to make a new document. Let's call it Stranger. And we're going to make it 2100 by, say, 1500. Nice and big. So we just got plenty of room to work with. And what we're starting off with is a base. And you could start with a font that looks similar, but I'm using Ben-Guat condensed, or Ben-Gat condensed. It's actually pronounced Ben-Gat. It looks like Ben-Guat, but let me spell it for you. B-E-N-G-U-I-A-T. As I toggle some options here. So that is our font. Specifically, it's the bold and condensed. Is that how you spell condensed? I think so. Version of it. You can get it for about 35 bucks at myfont.com, myfonts.com rather. And yeah, I mean, that is the foundation of the Stranger Things logo, but we are not going to stop there. We're going to do some custom editing to get it really, really exact. So let's start off by just typing Stranger Things. We're going to center align it. I'm going to select all and center align it. And I'm going to size it. Before I size it, I'm going to make it all capital. So I'm going to come down here in the character palette. You can see Photoshop has this toggle all caps. Click that. Boom. Already looking pretty close, right? Well, there's more to do. We're going to go ahead and get this down to, say, 250 points. I like to work in even numbers. By the way, here's a little tip. If Photoshop is running a little laggy for you, just go ahead and turn off the rulers with Command R, and then everything will be a little bit snappier. And now I'm going to take my S and my R on the ends, and I'm going to bump those to, say, 320, a little bit more, 326. Yeah. Boom, 326. Great. And on the bottom's a little smaller. Here we go. And our T's are a little bit bigger. I know, it seems silly, but we're going to go up to 250. So 246 for the rest of the numbers, for the rest of the letters, rather. The T's are 250, and the S and the R are 326. Now I'm going to select Trong. I'm going to select Trong, and in my character palette over here, I'm just going to bump the baseline up so that it matches the R and the S. And I'm specifically looking at this ER over here to get that look. It's like 48 does it. That looks correct to me. All right. So now we need to start kerning this and giving it that sort of custom look. The Stranger Things logo is not just Ben-Gat condensed bold flat. It is a specifically kerned font. In fact, if you notice, we'll start with the S. The S is way closer. So I'm going to come over here to tracking or kerning, whatever you want to call it, and I just want to tap it down so that it has to be much closer. 100, let's try 90. Yeah, that's good. T, I'm going to take the rest of these, and we're just going to go -60 across the board. Yes, much better looking. Now, the N and the G should actually be closer to each other. What I'm going to do is see this perfect. See how they're like a little bit going into each other. That's the look that you want there. And the E and the R are even closer too. So tap that down to -100. Stranger. Good. Cool. All right. Now let's do the same thing with things. Since this is a little bit all smaller text, let's go -50 across the board to get things, literally to get things a little closer to each other. And then the N and the G, I'm just going to keep ticking down until they're overlapping very slightly like that. Great. All right. Now we have got our Stranger Things in place. Our line spacing, or leading rather, is automatic. Let's change it to 72. Let's keep ticking it down. These things should be a little closer together. And we'll get 164. What I'm looking for is the space here and here. And now things are looking about like how we want them. So the next order of business is to actually start manipulating these letter forms. And the way we're going to do that, if I just center this here, I'm going to hold down Shift and center. And remember, save. I'm going to save this right now because saving is very important through this whole process. Great. So now that we're saved and we're ready to continue going, let's take our type layer, right click, and we're going to convert it to a shape. Now, if you're not sure what this does, let me show you. We'll zoom in. I'll press A on my keyboard, and now you can see we have access to the paths, and we can even see these overlapping paths here in these shapes. And now that we have access to the paths, we can really start giving this the look that the designers of the Stranger Things logo sort of intended. Namely, the E should be way lower, actually about 10 pixels lower. So let's select this here. I'm just going to hold down Shift, press down. Perfect. Don't touch it. Now, over here, it's a little fatter. So I want to take these 2 points. I'm just clicking and dragging them. Give me a little bit more here. Actually, tap it up. Tap these 2 up a little bit further. A little bit out more. And you can see this is broken, this curve. It looks sort of nasty. So I'm going to try to find this point here. There it is. And bring its handle and pull that down. Maintaining that same sort of curve in the E. All right, that's better. Now we're going to do our R. The R should actually line up with the A. So if we just draw a line, you can see the R, this point here, is a little high when how it cuts through the middle of the letters. So I'm going to delete that, and let's come and edit our R. RR. That's one way to say it, isn't it? I'm going to do so by taking all these points and just ticking them down 10 pixels. And this juts out a little bit, so I'm going to take these points here. I'm just going to tap them in. We don't want it so aggressively sticking out. Speaking of aggressively sticking out, the S needs some help too. So we're going to take these points. We're going to tap those in. Not too much, not too much. I'm going to take this. It's much more blunt on the actual logo. So we're going to bring that in. We're actually going to thicken it a bit. Up a little bit. Great. Next, we're going to take the serifs, and a serif is, of course, these little markings here, and we're going to patch those up. One of the things we can do here is you can see a lot of the shapes don't sit on exact pixels. Just select it with your direct select. Go to Free Transform with Command T, and just tap left and right, and that'll actually do a lot for you in terms of getting some of these points to snap to perfect pixels. We're going to make the perfect pizza. All right. Let's get that going. This is not exactly a sexy process, but it is necessary, especially if you're working with more organic shapes or shapes that you didn't draw yourself in Photoshop to get them to sort of fit. All right, now let's size up these serifs, and we're going to do that by selecting points like this. Over here with the R, I want to make sure I'm not grabbing the T inadvertently. Up here with the N, this point, and over here, these two, and I'm just clicking and dragging. We're going to do the top, and we're going to get this piece of the R. And now we're literally going to tap it up 4 pixels. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Much sharper, much closer to the desired effect. This G is a little bit special. So I'm going to do these guys and bring it 1, 2, 3, 4 down so it's sharper. When I say sharper, I don't mean less blurry. What I mean is, I guess, more severe. These things come down more to a point in the actual Stranger Things logo than what the font has given us. It's also important that when you grab these points, and we're doing the bottoms now, that you grab the points above as well as the points below. That way you're not changing the curve or the cut of the letters. Instead, you're just kind of condensing the serif. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So we'll bring those down, and I'll very quickly, or as quick as I can rather, get the rest of our points going here. Once you practice this a bunch, you'll be able to do it in your sleep for sure. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now let's take these. How can you tell that I've done this before, right? Let's just go all the way across here. Great. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. A little bit sharper, a little scarier, a little bit more severe. And we're going to do that to our R as well. A little meaner, even. You know, think of, if you haven't seen the show, think of the monster. Think of a monster. Think of Stephen King. Think spooky, scary. Now the next is to take care of this NG situation. It's overlapping right now. What we're going to do is we're going to create some boxes. I'm going to make them a different color so you can see them really good. Whoa! That's pretty crazy, isn't it? I'm going to take these boxes, and I'm just going to make a box that cuts in here. I'm going to go about, I'm thinking 12 pixels. I'm going to drag one up here and line it up. And make sure that you're not cutting into the N when you're doing this. Yeah, that looks good. Now, select your box, hit A to get your direct select. Copy, drag, get all your points. Hit Command C or Control C to copy and just delete that layer. Then click on the G. We're going to do Command V, paste, or Control V to paste on Windows. Then up here, we're going to change the shape mode to subtract the front shape. So we just pasted a shape on top of the Stranger Things shape. And now we're going to say cut out that shape that we just pasted in. See that? So it cuts off the G, and now we have that Stranger Things signature cut off G. We're going to do the same thing. So we'll select this, points, make sure you have it selected in your layers panel. Command C, just go ahead and delete it. Click on our G, paste it in, and then come up here and change subtract shape. All right, so now we're getting really close. The only thing left to add is our sort of lines or boxes that kind of encompass the whole logo. We're going to start right around the bottom of this serif on the T. We're going to drag to get to the bottom of the S, or the left-hand side of the S. And let's go 16. Seems a little thick now, but I don't think it'll be that bad. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option, drag that over so it's the same. And this is almost underlining the R. Now, I know what you're thinking, these are not the same lengths. Well, they're not the same length in the logo, if you can believe it. And now I'm going to take Option, I'm going to drag up another copy. I'm just going to get to the top, and then I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say 24 pixels up. And then I'm going to free transform it and take the right-hand side. Free transformer, Command T. Then I'm taking the right-hand side, dragging it so that it kind of matches up with the top of the R. And we're going to get it to match up with the left-hand side of this S here. It's good. I don't want it to overflow. Pretty good. All right. Command S, save your document, and we'll continue working. All right, now that we've got everything saved, and I'm going to save again, it's time to make this look a little bit more like the logo. So the first thing we're going to do is take everything, and we're going to hit U. And we'll fill it all, so let's make it yellow so we can see it. It's all one color. And now the background, I'm going to hit D on my keyboard. That clears whatever custom colors we may have had set up from last time we were using Photoshop. Then I'm actually going to hit X, and that swaps the colors. Now look over here, and you'll see the color swap. Great. Now I'm going to hit Command Delete, which is essentially the same thing as filling the whole background with whatever your background color is. Now our Stranger Things logo is on black, which is far more Stranger Things, right? Now let's select everything again and hit U. And the first thing we're going to do is come over to Stroke, and this is in the newer versions of Photoshop. If you have an older version of Photoshop, you may have to do this a different way through the Effects panel. And I'm going to click on the stroke. Let's pick a little bit more orange. Let's go down into like the brick reds here. That's good. And I have flux going. I'm going to disable flux so I can see all my proper colors. And we're going to make this 4 pixels thick. Then I'm going to take the fill and I'm going to make it nothing. All right, this is looking way more like the logo, right? So the next thing you'll notice is we have some little points here and here. You can choose to sort of make those more tapered. I'm going to leave them as pointy, but the way you would do that is when you press U up here in shape alignment and corners, you're going to change the corner to, I'll show you what it looks like when you do like the tapered corner. That's going to give you the N. You see it cuts off here. The A cuts off here. The T becomes less severe, but I like that. I like those pointy corners. That's a little rough on the A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly fix this A problem by hitting A on my keyboard. I'm going to select these 3 points. 1, 2, looks like there's a 4th there. 3, 4. I'm going to free transform that. Point is less egregious, less pointy. I'm also going to take the H and open it up a bit, just so it doesn't totally lose itself. And likewise, I'll probably take the A and adjust that point. Maybe this one down. So I lose as little, keep these gaps open so that they're nice and visible. All right, Stranger Things indeed. Now let's start to put on some of those custom glow effects. So I'm going to save and start. You can always look at a reference photo of whatever you're doing. And I will look at the Stranger Things, but I've got a pretty good idea of what I want in my head. So I'm going to take all these things. And I'm going to select them by holding down Shift and choosing from the bottom up. Hit Command G, and that puts them in a group. So now they kind of all move around together. That's good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer. And the new layer is going to be to put on some highlights. I'll take that layer and drag it above the group. You can see it becomes a little line here. And then I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to make it smaller by doing left bracket. You can right click. Looks like size 200. Let's go a little smaller. 150, great. And I'm going to turn the flow way down. So let's make the flow 10%. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush here and just start highlighting different pieces of the text to give it a little bit of a glow effect. And I might hit left bracket just so it's a little smaller and a little bit more control. I'm going to do like over here. And the nice thing about the 10% flow is you can kind of go over it again and again to get that effect. Really, the side of the R has got a good highlight to it. As well as the inside of the G. All the letters have like an otherworldly glow, I guess, if you will. And don't be afraid to go in between letters like this. So like if the N has got some shine there, maybe the G would pick it up, and don't let it just stay in one area. Like if it's bright, you know, don't worry about it falling off. We'll catch the right hand of this R. So on the left side of the A, we'll brighten that up. I know what you're saying, Ryan, this looks like you're ruining the whole thing, but I think one of the things I always tell people, especially in something like Photoshop, is it doesn't look right until all of a sudden it does. I'm going to go even smaller and just get a little bit of this area around the S, especially the tips here, the S's and the R's. Now remember, don't go too small or else people will be able to see the lines that you drew, and that's no good. Highlight sort of the sides of the eye here. H is going to get it, especially right over here. T, at the top of the T, and you can either do this to follow exactly what the logo is, or you can kind of do what I'm doing and experiment and see what's fun. This here, does the N need something? Let's do the tips here of the N, and then the G will be a little bit more aggressive with the G. I like the bottom curves of the S's, really getting it. Picking that up. Now with that layer, you want to bring your mouse over to the layer. Let's call this highlights. And then I'm going to hold down Option and be Alt on Windows. And you can see here we get a little arrow. That means create a clipping mask. So it's going to clip to the content underneath it. Watch what happens when I click this. Okay, so now all that sort of excess that was bleeding off the side is gone. And now that you can see it like this, you could have done this sort of originally. You can start playing with, if you like where those highlights are, or if you think they need a little bit more specificity as to how big or small they are. Let's get the inside of this G a little bit. Yeah. You kind of want every letter to be sort of partaking in it in some way. That looks good to me. Now we're going to double click on this layer, and I am going to create a color overlay. Now the color overlay on this layer is in color mode, so that's not going to do a lot. Let's go into something more like a normal mode. And you can't quite see that, so let me change the color so you can see it. Now we can control the color of that. In the case of Stranger Things, it's taking on almost a pale red, which would be like a pink. So you almost now have like this pinkish, pale, right? Something like that. And if you want my numbers, the hex is FE727F. I'll hit OK. That looks pretty good to me. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to straight up right click and duplicate this layer. Called highlights copy. I'm also going to hold down Option and see the arrow with the X through it. That means unclip it. Oh no, we're back to this. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and kind of put it in a different mode, overlay mode, so that it absorbs more color. And I'm just going to take the opacity way, way down. So I'm going to just use my arrow key and opacity and just bump it up. It looks like, I want to say 12%. Looks great to me. And you have to zoom in maybe to see how this is doing. I'll hit Command H to hide that. But now I'll toggle it on and off. So you can see the glow that's happening there. And that glow is just kind of calling extra attention to those highlights and saying, hey, we're over here. You know, I might take the glow and push it a little bit more to the orange end of the spectrum, or yellow even. Just so that it doesn't turn too pink on me. Yeah, that looks good. Now the next thing is that we have all of this. I'm going to take both the group and those two things, and I'm going to group those. Now it's nice in both versions of Photoshop. I'm going to call this layer Stranger Things Composed. It's nice that in Photoshop, the more recent versions, it kind of allows you to apply effects on entire groups. So now I'm going to double click. So now I'm going to right click. So now I'm going to select this group, and I'm going to go ahead and come down to effects and give it an outer glow. Yeah, that's a little crazy. So I'm going to hit cancel on that. And I'm just going to select our group one, our type, and I'll call this type. I'll double click on that. Let's give that an outer glow. Yeah, that's looking closer to what I want. Let's turn up the opacity so I can see. Yep, good. Down a little bit more. You don't want to go too strong on any of this. It's going to be super subtle. I've got it at 17%. And let's turn it on and off so you can see. Yes, that's right to me. So now it's glowing. It's in the dark. It's more intense. Now what we're going to do is take all that group, right? And we're going to right click and we're going to make it a smart object. Now, just so you know, this is going to look like your layers are gone. They're not. But the reason why we're turning it into a smart object is we're a couple effects away from really making this perfect. So before I make it a smart object, I'm going to hit Command S and save. That's always the smart thing to do. Convert to smart object. All right. Now it's a smart object. What does that mean, Ryan? Well, now it means we can apply some non-destructive effects on the whole object in order to get a desired result. So the first one, we're going to zoom in. So pretend like we're seeing the credits. All right, we're going to zoom in. That's enough of that. You guys are here to learn. We're going to go to Filter. And first we're going to do is let's blur and add a Gaussian blur. And I'm going to go 0.8 pixels here. That looks perfect to me. And the reason we're doing that is it kind of softens it all up. You're going to remember, this is harkening back to like old horror movie VHS days. So you kind of want to round off those edges. See here, it's kind of creating these little extra roundings. The next thing we're going to do is kind of beat it up a little bit. And what I mean by that is, let's look over here for reference. I'm going to filter, noise, add noise. And this is 5% noise, but you can see it's also going on the glow as well because it's happening to the whole smart object. And you can mess with this number. You can get it very noisy, right? And really beat it up. But I think something like 5 or 6%. I'm going to do 6 and look at that when I zoom out. Know if it's enough. It might be just enough. Let's say 6% and call it that. Now that I've got that going, I'm going to go ahead and emphasize just a few highlights. So creating a new layer, grabbing our paintbrush, nice and small. Take these highlights, I'm going to push them to the reddish orange end of the spectrum. Almost want it to be yellow. Some of these highlights. That's even too much. So what I do here is just delete that. Hit B for my brush again. I'm going to turn the filter, the flow down to really low. Let's try 3%. What I'm doing here is I'm just taking a few key parts to like really visually kick, you know? Right here. Any part where you've done more aggressive highlighting. What we're doing, just by painting on this raw color, is giving it even more of a glow, almost to say this part here is brighter than the parts in other sections of the photo, other letters. It convinces more because light would bounce off in this type of material that they're using. So you're almost getting a little bit more. Great. Tips there. Okay. So now I'm just going to experiment with some blend modes to see if I can't get anything a little bit nicer than that. We'll hold down Shift, start pressing plus. That's cycling through blend modes. Linear dodge looks like one that's really great to me. It's a little intense. I'm going to take down the opacity. I'm also going to take this whole smart object and do a filter, color overlay. Look at that, you could recolor the Stranger Things. I'm going to come up here, I'm going to go more red. I'm just going to take the blending mode here. I'm going to hit OK. And for my number, it's FF2312. Hit OK. I'm just going to dial back the opacity. It's all about the subtlety right now. So now I'm just crushing sort of the yellow. I went a little too far yellow. And this is just a course correction. Got that at 30%, maybe even 20. No, some of these numbers, you just play with them until they look right. All right, grainy. Turn off that extra mode. All right, you're getting it. I'm going to take these two things. I'm going to group them so that I move them around together. Position them right here in the middle. And now I'm going to actually use something that I picked up from Creative Market, a good website called Lovely Textures, and drag one of these sort of distressed things in that look a little not Stranger Things, right? It looks a little bit more psychedelic, but I'm going to just put it over the background. Change its mode here to luminosity, killing the color. Then I'm going to go, and you can just Google film grain or distress. I'm going to make an effect layer called levels. And then over here in the properties of levels, what you're going to see me do is I'm going to take the blacks and I'm going to crank them way up. So they're going to become way, way, way more black, right? I'm going to take the mids. I'm going to crank those up too. So we even get rid of even more in terms of what our light values are. Now we've got a lot of these white specks. I'm going to just tone those down by taking the maximum, which is white, just dragging it down so that it's more gray. Too. Looks like it about 100. That, to me, is pretty darn good. I might go a little less aggressive. Let's see how much I can retain. I don't want it to be too much. But that it might be hard to see, but I'm still keeping some of the gray detail up here so we get some of that grain, and we're still getting our dots around here. I'll hit Command 1. Zoom all the way out to 100%, and I think we're looking good. So that is one of the best approximations I can get to the Stranger Things logo. If you guys know a better way, I would love to hear it. And I know it takes a little bit of time, but if you really want to get as close as you possibly can, you gotta start. You gotta start with that Ben Gat condensed, bold. You gotta do your custom work, lowering that E, taking care of the S, the R, you know, dropping some of the serifs so they're a little tighter. And then, of course, make sure the whole thing has a little bit of a raggedy, film grainy feel. And the blur just kind of puts it a little bit out of focus, which is okay, right? This is supposed to feel organic. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you all for checking out my tutorials. Thank you for subscribing and all of that good stuff. I hope to be doing a lot more of these going forward because I do love to teach you guys. All right, until next time, I will see you later and keep designing.